This is going to be the second video about using the quadratic formula. So here's the example. I've got x plus 1 equals 2x squared, and I want to use the quadratic formula to solve this. So I want to put it in standard form, and here's a point I want to make. I could subtract 2x squared from both sides and get everything, all of my terms over on the left side, but maybe I don't want to start with a negative 2. So I could also subtract x and 1 from this side, from the left side, and get all my terms over here. Okay, so the left side is going to equal 0, and the right side is going to be 2x squared minus x minus 1. In other words, it doesn't matter which side you get all of your variables, all of your terms on. Because if I have 0 equals 2x squared minus x minus 1, that's the same as saying 2x squared minus x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, so I just wanted to make that point. Now, this equation is in standard form, and I'm going to figure out what my a, b, and c values are. So a is the coefficient for the squared term, that's the x squared over here. So a is going to equal 2. B is the coefficient for the x to the first term, the middle term. And since there's no coefficient written, it's just going to be, in this case, a negative 1. And c is also negative 1. So now I'm going to write my quadratic formula. That's x equals negative b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that whole thing is over 2a. So now I'm ready to plug my values in. Okay, so I get x equals negative, b is a negative 1, so there's my negative b, plus or minus the square root of b is negative 1 squared minus 4 times a is a 2 minus 4ac, and c is a negative 1. And that's all over 2a, and a is 2. Okay, so doing the math for this, I'm going to get x equals negative 1 is a positive 1, plus or minus negative 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 2. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, and then negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. And that's all going to be over 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so I can combine the 1 and the 8. I'll get 1 plus or minus the square root of 9 over 4. And the square root of 9 is 3, so I can simplify this even more to 1 plus or minus 3 over 4. Now, since I've got a plus or minus, let's figure out what the plus value would be, and then what the minus value would be. So I'm going to have x equals 1 plus 3 over 4, and x equals 1 minus 3 over 4. Well, 1 plus 3 is 4, so x equals 4 over 4. So x equals 1. Or 1 minus 3 is negative 2, so x equals negative 2 over 4. And I can reduce that. That's going to be a negative 1/2. So my solution is going to be x equals 1 or negative 1/2. Okay, now let me review what I did. So I got all my terms on one side of the equation. It doesn't matter which side you put them on. I identified my A, B, and C values. I wrote my quadratic formula. Then I plugged those A, B, and C values into the quadratic formula. I did the math, and where's the answer? I came up with my answer down at the bottom of the page here. Now, there's a point I want to make. Let's look at that whole equation again. So I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to do it much simpler. So I'm going to get 0 equals 2x squared minus x minus 1. Now, if you're told to use the quadratic formula, then do what we just did. If you're not, take a look and see if you can solve this. As it turns out, I can take this and break it down into 2x squared must have been 2x times x. And the only way to make a negative 1 would be a 1 times a 1. And since that was a negative, I need to put a negative sign in for one of these and a positive sign in for the other. And if I put a negative sign here and a positive sign here, I'm going to get back to this original trinomial. So I've now got it factored. You can check this by multiplying it back, by foiling it back to make sure that it came from the original one. And now I'll just solve this. So I get 2x plus 1 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. So I'll subtract 1 from each side over here. And I'm going to get 2x equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 2. And I'm going to get x equals negative 1/2. For this equation, I'll add 1 to both sides. I'm going to get x equals 1. So my solutions are going to be x equals negative 1/2 and 1. So the point I want to make is this. If you have to use the quadratic formula, either because you're told to use it on a test or because you can't solve an equation any other way, then use the quadratic formula. But before you jump into it, take a look and see what you've got. It might be a lot faster and a lot less steps and a lot less dangerous. In other words, less of a chance of making a mistake because there's less steps if you just factor it by some other method. Okay, so that's about it. Get plenty of practice with this. You're going to use the quadratic formula quite a bit in the math you're going to do in your current course and in future courses. So make sure you understand it well. Take care. I'll see you next time.